Ancient myths can and have been reconstructed by linguistic analysis, by linguists, etymologists, and philologists. They can study the history of languages, especially by looking closely at literature. They can figure out some of the earliest forms of myths by comparing stories from around the world to each other. It is a scientific process, and it's really accurate. Before there was time, before the beginning, there was darkness. And from the darkness, time began. And when time began, so the cosmos produced fire and ice. This was the beginning of the cosmos. And within it, two brothers were formed, twins. Their names Manus, which means man, and Yemo, which means twin. And with them was a giant cow. Through time, gods were created, both good and chaotic. And through the cosmos, they all traveled. Through the eons, they lived, grew, and traveled until the brothers decided that they needed a home, a world on which to live, to inhabit, to create a place of order from the chaos in the cosmos. But to create this world, a sacrifice had to be made, and so it was that Yemo agreed to be sacrificed. And Manus killed Yemo. Yemo, the first dead man, became king of the dead, and his realm he opened for all those who followed after. And this was the first death, and so death was introduced into the cosmos. Manus descended to the world, and there became the first priest, and so he slew the great cosmic bull with whom he traveled through the cosmos for eons, and in doing this, he taught ritual sacrifice to the people, as this would allow the world and everything inside and outside of it to be kept in order. Manus cut Yemo's body into pieces, and from these he created the world, the sun, the moon, the sea, the stars, the winds, and earthly fire. From this dismemberment of Yemo, it was his flesh that became the earth, his hair grass, his bones yielded stone, his blood water, his eyes the sun, his mind the moon, his brain the clouds, his breath the wind, and his head the heavens. And Manus, having killed the great bull, dismembered it and watched on as all living animals came from its body, one springing forth from another, and so on. And all edible plants were created too, and all this nourishing the people of the land and causing the earth to become fertile. And finally, Manus had created the people, and the first was Trito, and Trito means third. As Manus had sacrificed his twin, Yemo, to the Sky Father, the gods showed their approval and gave cattle to Trito, a gift to allow people to be rich in food and materials, and all seemed good. But on this world, chaos had been waiting and had found a home there. And the people's cattle were stolen under cover of night in a treacherous move by the three-headed, six-eyed serpent, Ingwe. Trito was not strong enough to fight off the serpent, and so in time, he made a sacrifice to the storm god, offering his ritual drink to gain the god's strength for a fight with the evil serpent. And the storm god was pleased and came to the world and offered to go with Trito to fight Ingwe. And so together they traveled far into the mountains, beyond the borders of their land, to retrieve the cattle. When they arrived at the serpent's cave, they together battled Ingwe, that chaotic three-headed serpent, and eventually slew him, allowing Trito to bring the cattle home. With the cattle free and back on the land of the people, Trito was recognized as the first warrior and hunter, a hero that the people needed, and he was celebrated for recovering the wealth of the people and ensuring the priests received cattle for sacrifice to thank the gods for all they have done for them. And so, Manus created a sacrificial fire, and over it killed a bull, offering it to the gods, the flames and smoke reaching high into the sky. Their Sky Father and the other gods received that sacrifice, ensuring their share, keeping the gods content, encouraging them to keep chaos away, and in return the gods continued to give cattle to the people. Manus continued to sacrifice, and a new king was crowned, and he was also called Yemo after the first, and he was prepared to sacrifice himself to keep the people safe and the land fertile. And Trito continued to keep the cattle safe. This cattle sacrifice ensured the fertility of the earth, all living things upon it, and it kept the cosmos in order. Okay, so that myth I just talked about is one of the oldest known, and it's been reconstructed scientifically. And because it spread with migration starting up north in the Siberian area, going over to North America, and then down south, splitting, branching off, they were able to figure out by things that were added and things that were taken away. So basically what you just heard is a story that was told 20,000 years ago or more. Okay, so many ancient civilizations recognized the star cluster Gemini as twins, and on Earth they were seen holy, blessed, or even cursed, actual twins. There are many superstitions around twins. They were often seen as being from or related in some way to the stars. So Gemini is located on the ecliptic, the apparent path of the sun and other planets, and this means the sun passes through this constellation at the same time each year. So Castor and Pollux are twin half-brothers in Greek mythology. One is birthed from a king of earth and one born of a god. I'm going to quote here. Their mother was Leda, but they had different fathers. Castor was the mortal son of Tyndareus, the king of Sparta, while Pollux, the brightest star, was the divine son of Zeus, who raped Leda in the guise of a swan. Maybe Cygnus, now we're talking. Which Andrew pointed out to me. So, the two brothers shared many adventures together. They even accompanied the Argonauts and their leader Jason in search of the Golden Fleece. However, during this journey, a series of conflicts arose, and only the immortal Pollux survived. In painful mourning for Castor, his brother Pollux asked Zeus to let him share his own immortality with his twin to keep them together, and they were transformed into the constellation Gemini. The pair were regarded as the patron of travelers and perhaps souls. Though accounts of the birth are varied, they are often said to have been born from an egg. The twins were male and female in some of the myths, but they were androgynous in the earliest forms as primordial beings, always androgynous. By the time the Gemini story reached Rome, several changes were made. The bovine had transformed into a wolf. This wolf allowed Romulus and Remus to suckle its milk as infants, ensuring their survival. Eventually, again, fratricide occurs, with Romulus killing Remus and founding the city of Rome. The idea that to create something, there must be a sacrifice, and Remus was it. The divine twin stories can be found all over the world. The Mayan hero twins are a great example of this. They represent complementary forces such as the sun and moon, the male and female, life and death. These hero twins are bird hunters, and while fighting the god Seven Macaw, one twin loses an arm. They challenge the gods to a game to retrieve the head and body of their father from the underworld. The gods pull many tricks on them and try to kill the twins. The gods succeed, but the twins are brought back to life in a river, the Milky Way, which could be seen, this is going back to Andrew's research as well. At another point in the myth, one twin even loses his head, but somehow continues to play ball. The twins win and retrieve their father's body, and they destroy the gods. This game is known to be a religious event of creation that they saw as core to their continued existence. The Maya venerated their gods by playing the game and making sacrifices. At Chichen Itza, on the wall of the ball court, there's a panel which shows the Mayan creation myth. A player is decapitated, and in its place rise 7 blood snakes, each representing the central elements of creation. The 6th serpent carries the name Wak Chan, which is the Mayan axis mundi, or world tree, from which all sacred knowledge comes. The hieroglyph for the ball court is a stepped shape that resembles a crevice on the central mound of creation in Maya mythology. This crevice was called home, and the word was regularly interchanged with ball court. The creator god of maize who lives in a ball court in the underworld is like the green man who resurrects every winter solstice. His spirit enters the middle world through this crevice, much like the one built into the ball court above ground. When players moved along the ball court, they were interacting with the creative deity, encouraging him in the game of creation. As the player in the above image is killed, it again reiterates that creation must have a sacrifice in order to produce. And the shape of the ball court resembles the H symbol on the belts of the central twin pillars of Enclosure D. I find that very interesting. So we have the number 7, possibly for the Pleiades, and 7 macaw, and the sacrifice. Another name given to the ball court was, I can't pronounce this, Tlactli, the looking place, leading to the idea that under specific conditions, the area may have been used to show the perpetual motion of the heavenly bodies. So that gives the cosmological aspect. And actually, this play was performed at night using obsidian mirrors on the backs. Wow. In Zoroastrianism, coming from ancient Persia, now Iran, Ahura Mazda created the world, and the primordial bovine of Zoroastrian cosmogony and cosmology set everything in motion. The primordial bull was killed by Angra Mainyu for no reason other than he could. Gavadota's corpse, the bovine, is taken to the moon and purified, and from the bull's purified seed, all animals come into being. Here, the bovine is killed, and someone with a similar name to Manus, Angra Mainyu. So it's all interconnected, and it's spread out throughout time, and it went everywhere, and it's important. On Crete, King Minos ordered young noble citizens, 7 young men and 7 maidens. The number 7 pops up a lot in these types of myths, to be offered as sacrificial victims to the half-human, half-taurine monster Minotaur, who was eventually killed by Theseus. So actually around the world, there are tons of these myths, and 7 and certain motifs constantly pop up. So I think these myths teach us a lot about what our ancient ancestors were up to cosmologically. They were teaching about the cosmos through memorable stories that were passed down through many, many millennia. There's speculation that some of these stories go back over 50,000 years. So Andrew spoke about the gates yesterday, the silver and golden, and I'm going to say a little bit as well. So the ecliptic is the orbital plane of Earth around the sun. And from an observer on Earth, the sun's movement around the celestial sphere over the course of a year marks out a path along the ecliptic against like a background of stars. So, the ancient Greeks believed that souls resided in the Milky Way between incarnations, and that there were 2 gates on the Milky Way. These are the Silver Gate of Gemini and Taurus, but more specifically through Gemini and the Pleiades, through which souls descended back to Earth to be reborn. And this gate is also known as the Gate of Man. They believed the Golden Gate or Sagittarius Gate was where souls ascend after death, which is Andrew's research, just the other side of mine. I think that Göbekli Tepe, Enclosure D, they were pinpointing the Silver Gate between Gemini and Taurus, specifically, as I mentioned, the Pleiades. And here's why. If you were at Göbekli Tepe about 9600 BC, and you were standing between the pillars of Enclosure D, staring south, not north. North is the Golden Gate, but south. The same way the pillars are facing, right? So they're looking the same direction as you at this point. In the night sky, you would see where the ecliptic line passes through the Pleiades and Gemini, meaning you will see over time as well the planets, sun and moon orbiting along with it. And this is really important for astronomical observations. And this image is the same time, 9600 BC, but during the winter solstice. The previous one was nearish the summer solstice. Okay, so I want to kind of take a look at the symbolism that's on the pillars. This is pillar 18, and the pendant seems to show two beings holding hands, and I really postulate that these are Gemini. Since all planets, as well as the moon and the sun, which is shown below Gemini on the pillar, always move very close along the virtual line of the ecliptic. All of these bodies are regularly passing through the golden gate of the ecliptic, which the builders of Göbekli Tepe seem to know, and I think we can prove it here. In the crook of the arm, the pillar holds a canid, and we can look at the night sky during that time and see what's there. So right next to Gemini is the fox, or canid. So to me, it's pretty clear what was being displayed. The way we look at the stars today, the animals portrayed, a lot of those stories come from long, long ago. We kept the same animals. All of that stayed because it was important. Okay, the symbolism found at the bottom of the pillar shows 7 birds or chicks of some sort, probably water birds. I think these represent the Pleiades. The Pleiades star cluster is known to be the 7 sisters, always female. And in fact, one of the oldest known stories about the Pleiades comes from the Aboriginal Australians, which some speculate may be up to over 70,000 years old. And there too, they were known as the 7 sisters. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. All right, the central pillar, the other central pillar, is 31, and on its pendant is a bull, and I believe this is Manus or Orion, and him having slayed the cosmic bull creates life. So I believe the pillars are holding their stomachs. It's an act of showing an abstract form of pregnancy and rebirth that's about to happen after death. I also just wanted to throw this in to mention that, and luckily I can read Luwian hieroglyph, but I want to say that the Hittites used the above image right there, that one, that's Luwian script. It has a bull's head with another symbol meaning Deus or God, the encircled symbol over there. It's very similar to what is displayed on the central pillars of Enclosure D, and I think the God symbol in the egg-shaped circle represents Gemini, because they are the same image on both sides. And the bull's head representing Taurus, making up the place of the ecliptic and the silver gate. So you're following the path from Gemini to Taurus, so the path of rebirth. So that was God, rebirth, to come again, to live. So this might be what they were trying to say with the 2 central pillars. Look at me, look at the gateway. It's the entry point back to Earth. That was the hope, because they died early. They were very young, some of them. They didn't get to live as long as us. So it was a really strong hope. So look to the north and see the ascension journey of the soul through the Golden Gate. Look to the south, to the gate of man, the Silver Gate, and be reborn. And like the myth I read in the beginning, Orion, the warrior, or Trito, the first warrior, slays the cosmic bull, which is a necessary act of creation, as life bursts forth from the bull's dead body, a sacrifice, as I said, that must take place. They believe this in order for the cycle of life to continue. Enclosure D shows us the full cycle of life, death, and rebirth of the soul. This was also a way to establish hierarchy, creating a priest that could only be doing the sacrificing, so that creating levels of humans and their places. I don't think these pillars were just, pointing just to the night's, journey. They specifically were showing us the Golden Gate of the ecliptic. That is what is written on the symbols. And it's not the first place for it to be shown. In caves in France, it's shown as well. It's known. So this wouldn't be a first, but it's still important. And if I'm correct, the builders of Göbekli Tepe did know about the ecliptic And the ecliptic is an asterism in the constellation of Taurus that's been known for 20,000 plus years. It's built by the eye-catching open star clusters of Pleiades and Hyades that form the two posts of a virtual gate at the two sides of the ecliptic line that goes through many constellations that include Gemini. And as I said, you can see this at the winter solstice and summer solstice in 9600 BC at Shanliurfa. The pillar with the pendant, showing what we know today as Orion or Trito, the first warrior, and it's depicting Taurus of the pendant. And the pillar on the right showing the Gemini constellation, the divine twins, Menes and Yemo. That's the first name we have for them. We don't know what they were originally called. It's showing the ecliptic and the Pleiades. So it's simply telling you where to look. I also wanted to talk about these twin figures or Janus figures. And they've been found at sites like Çatalhöyük, which is Çatalhöyük is right there, that one furthest on my right. And top right, my right, is a site called Tepe in Turkey, the bottom from Karahan Tepe, and left from Ain Ghazal. And that one's about 7500 BC, so it's quite old. So the concept of divine twins as being special and to be looked for and worshipped during that time just existed, and it is Gemini. Also, this androgynous twin deity figure from the ancient site of Jagra on Malta is most likely representing the same thing as well, the twins. What's also interesting to me is that they used H-shaped altars in the Maltese temples. So this shape, this combination stayed on for quite a while. And also I wanted to talk about the Sabirch panel. And I think it relates to the myth, with the twins being shown, this one being the one that was sacrificed, that caused the fertility of the earth, the creation. And this being the slaying of the bull here, him with the weapon. And above it is actually from the Indus Valley. It's about, I think it's 3300 BC, but it's showing pretty much the same thing, with the being between the two lions or leopards, whatever they are. So the tradition continued for thousands and thousands of years and didn't divert in some places. And wanted to end with that. Does it make sense? Sorry.